The only real God is the one that you believe in. Start looking for the God in others. And if you find you're tuning into a wave, well then I don't know much about being saved.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, friends.
Welcome into another episode of Spiritual Philosophy Chatter with the Joneses. I'm Danny Jones.
And I am Samantha Jones.
And this is episode 194.
194.
Very nice. What is the topic?
It is healing through shadow work.
Ah.
Yeah.
Good.
It's a big topic, heavy kind of topic,
Yeah.
but it's really important in the spiritual journey. So
And healing is important.
healing is very important.
Cool.
Yes.
Before we get into that one, anything you want to talk about from last week?
Yes. So last week we did connecting to your higher self, and Paul said, really enjoyed this episode. Interesting point with driving being meditative. Totally agree.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it really is. And that's okay. Like, if you look this up online, it's really a scientific proven fact that your brain goes into this like trance kind of state.
Yeah.
And it's okay because you know what you're doing. You're
Yeah.
just kind of shut down a little bit, you know? Like
I think that happens with anything that you're concentrating on.
Yeah.
I mean, driving just happens to be one that's a bit scary.
Yeah.
So when you hear the term meditate
Yeah.
and driving in the same sentence, you're like, what?
Yeah. That doesn't sound right.
Yeah, that sounds a little unsafe.
But it does when you get your mind totally off of your problems or whatever it is you're thinking about on a normal basis. That's when the messages can come in.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a perfect time
Yeah.
when you're driving, you know?
Yeah.
I also posted pictures. Last week we had talked about some of the synchronicities that we had seen. And in the discussion group, I posted pictures of those synchronicities. So if you haven't seen them yet, go have a look.
Yeah, I think in the last episode I added like a 6 on the front of those 2 license
Yeah.
plates, which did not exist.
That's okay. It was still the same,
Yeah.
you know. I'm like, I'm not even going to correct.
Yeah.
It's fine. It's the same thing. So anyways, so yeah, check those out. And then every week we answer 2 questions. This week, both of these questions are about animals. The first one is from Melissa. She said, can we reincarnate into an animal? I watch an eagle's nest on YouTube, and it is so beautiful to watch the little family they create every year. I love it. Plus, the view from the nest is incredible. My husband says he won't be joining me. He doesn't want to be a bird. You know, Melissa, honestly, like, I think this is an area that Danny and I, our opinions vary a little bit. I don't see why we can't be, but I honestly believe that if you're a human soul, you're a human soul, and if you're an animal, you're an animal soul. Now, I do believe that a human soul can jump into an animal's body and learn to, like, things through that. Like, sometimes you see weird birds doing weird things. Well, is that the spirit is telling the bird to do that? Or did they actually like commandeer the bird's body? I believe they actually commandeer the bird's body, which means you are getting that experience flying. You're getting all kinds of experiences. But yeah, that's just my opinion.
Right.
So you want to share your opinion?
Oh,
Because it's a little different.
yeah, no, I'm different in the way that I believe that souls live many lives, and there are reasons for that. And outside of the lessons that we have to learn throughout our existence as a soul and to get closer to God or the source, we also have to experience it, what it's like to be different elements in the world that we're going to be in. And that is part of the reason that we live so many lives. So I believe that many of us have been around, if not all of us, for much longer than we thought
Right.
in our own personal existence. And meaning I've spent time as a plant or air. I've spent time as a life. I don't know what that exists as far as air.
Right.
How long is the life, you know?
Right.
But just like this life, technically I can opt out anytime I want also.
Yeah.
So why couldn't I as air?
Yeah.
But so I believe we kind of grow through this process and learn because we're living on a living thing. The earth is just not a ball of rock that we're put here on to destroy. It is alive.
Yeah.
And we need to understand that in order to be at harmony
Yeah.
with this universe and understanding. So I feel like it's like an evolution of our soul, just like an evolution of the incarnate on this planet to be certain things, and that would include animals.
Right.
And then eventually I move on to a human. But I also believe, yes, that what you're saying is true, that spirits can encourage or commandeer, whatever you want to say,
Yeah.
an animal to do something to benefit whatever it is they're trying to do.
Absolutely. And I don't see any reason why that can't extend to a rock or a tree or whatever. That we, hey, I want to feel what it's like to be a tree in this soul, and you go and do that. But the thought, I mean, I know time is linear and blah, 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 but the thought of being a tree and they live like how many years?
Imagine a rock.
Yeah, right, exactly. It's like, how long does this go on for? So I have to assume that they just kind of, come and go.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I hope that answers your question, Melissa. I love that question.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. And then Jen, she said, not sure if you've answered this before in your Rainbow Bridge episode, but do animals time their death? Do they have contracts as we do and choose their own death? I start nursing school in a week, and I feel like the timing of my dog's passing was a fast exit and was planned around nursing school. Like she didn't want to be a stress on me during the new chapter in my life and decided to go. It was all completely unexpected and happened within 48 hours. So she had a little dog that recently passed away, like within the last week or so. And she just started nursing school. So I definitely believe that these animals, they come into our lives when we need them and they exit when they need to. I believe that death is planned. It is not random. It doesn't just happen.
Right.
It's executed the way it's supposed to.
Yeah.
Not just with animals, but with us as well. And I see this a lot where there's some kind of life change coming up for a person, a family, whatever. And so an animal will choose to leave at that time because the life change will be easier for them without that animal in their lives. Right. And of course, you ask, why? How could life be easier without the animal? Well, if you're honest with yourself, you'll realize that animals take a lot of work. And if you're going through something like nursing school and you have one that requires medication, maybe is diabetic and requires insulin at a certain time and you can't be home at that time or whatever it is that the issue is, they know that it's just easier for them to go, and they're not scared to go because they're not taught that death is a thing like bad thing like we are.
Right.
Yeah.
And also something to consider that I was kind of thinking was that in terms of like soul contract, and that your pets can reincarnate to other pets to come back to you, you could have had this contract with them before you came here.
Yeah, exactly.
They could have been on that side, or regardless, you're connecting with them.
Yeah.
And decide you're going to come to me at this particular time in my life.
Yep.
When I could really use you.
Yeah.
And you'll leave at this time.
Yep.
So yeah, it is. They're part of a player. They're one of the players in your cast.
Yep.
Essentially. And so just because they're an animal doesn't deplete the significance of their role as a soul, as a spirit.
I've talked about my dog Sierra that passed away from hemangiosarcoma, and when she died, there seemed to be no reason for it. Like, life was stable, there wasn't any changes coming. She was young, she was 6 years old. I didn't learn what the purpose was until later. And that was so that I can help people that are experiencing hemangiosarcoma, because it's an awful cancer that can take an animal's life within hours. Yeah. And so I get a lot of those people that come to me, probably a couple a week, and they don't even realize that they're drawn to me because that's what happened to their animal. So sometimes it's those types of things in life. Sometimes it's a lesson that we have to learn, whatever it is. You had asked about a soul contract, Jen, and absolutely I agree that there's soul contracts with our animals as well as with people.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that.
Yeah. So I hope that answers your question, Jen.
Thanks, Jan.
Great questions, both of you. Thank you. Okay, and then I do a reading every week. Okay. So this is for Angel. Angel says, is Cassie happy in heaven? Is she with her sister And Star, does she know we are all missing her like crazy? Casey saved my life years ago when I was going through severe depression. If it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be here. This is another thing I want to point out, is that a lot of times an animal will come into our lives when we're going through some kind of heartache or whatever. I had a bird that I adopted shortly before my mother passed away, and he was one of the things that I leaned on when my mom passed away. He was one of the things that helped me get through my depression. So these animals absolutely can be placed in our lives in a time like this when we need them, for sure.
Yeah.
So that goes back to the question from Jen. So let me connect to Cassie. Give me just a second. Okay. Cassie was very much about your feelings and how you were feeling. She put you first. So she wanted to make sure you're good and then she's good. She read your energy a lot. And when you were nervous or sad or going through this depression, like you were talking about, she felt it. But she had her ways of bringing that out of you. I see her giving you little kisses and you holding her like a baby and like holding her close to you and crying. And she's telling me that this was one of the reasons that she came here, was to provide you with that kind of unconditional love and nurturing that you needed. Some things have changed in your life since then. Things have gotten better. You have grown a lot, and there are new people that have come into your life, she's telling me. And these are all really good things for you. But kind of like what we were talking about with Jen, she left because it was her time to go. That part of the story was over, and you needed to move on, and so did she. But her little soul will absolutely come back to you. And it's so funny that she says little soul, and then she shows me a giant dog. So I have a feeling that the next dog she's going to come back as is going to be pretty big.
Wow.
Let's see. Let me answer these other questions. Is she happy in heaven? Absolutely. There's no sadness in heaven. There's no anything like that. It's a beautiful place. Just love, unconditional love and happiness. It's the highest vibrations, much higher than anything that we experience here.
Yeah, I think one of the analogies was your worst day there is your best equivalent to your best day here.
Yes, exactly. Yep. So she is very happy there. I do see her with a couple of other dogs, similar size to her. One looks darker, might be more of a Lhasa Apso, because I see more hair in the face area. Kind of black and white is what it looks like. And I see them running around together. And then there's people that are watching on. There's actually a couple that stands out to me, like a husband and wife. This could be grandparents, most likely. And then there's just a single man that looks like he passed away very young, probably in his 30s, I'm feeling. Maybe an uncle or somebody. But all of these people are around her, and so she's not lonely, she's not unhappy, she's absolutely enjoying her life in heaven. And she loves you very much and knows that you love and miss her, and she tells me that she is still very much around you and absolutely will be until it's time for her to reincarnate.
That's awesome.
Yay. Fabulous.
Very cool.
So thank you, Angel and Cassie. Hope that you enjoyed that. Speaking of Cassie, we have a listener, Cassie, and I've been trying to reach her, and so this might be the only way that I can, because she's like off social media. So Cassie, if you're listening,
if you're out there,
message me, because I'm thinking about you. So
there you go.
It reminded me because of the dog. Anyways, so okay.
All right.
So let's give our info before we move on to the episode.
Yep.
Okay, so you can find me at SamanthaJonesPsychicMedium.com. My radio show is every Wednesday from 10 a.m. on VoiceAmerica.com. And I would like to announce, because I don't think I announced this last week, that I have renewed my show for a year.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Very cool.
Thank you.
I think it was a wise choice.
It just started. Yeah. You know, it's just starting to get good. Let's see where it goes.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it was a 13-week pilot, which is next week. Is 13 weeks. So,
cool.
And my guest this last week was Mystic Molly, and she was wonderful. We had it was a great show, huh?
It was. She was good.
We've talked a little bit about it, that she's going to come on the show regularly so that we can have these kinds of discussions with things like her and I have been through a lot of the same things. We both didn't have a mentor on the spiritual journey. So we can connect a lot on those things and maybe help more people together. So I'm excited about that.
Cool.
So there's that. That's for me. What about you, sir?
Very good. For my art, djonesartcollection.com for the web. at DJones Art Collection for Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. And that's it.
Very good.
All right, then. Episode 194, Healing Through Shadow Work.
I love this topic. I love all these spiritual topics, but this one is, there's something about the shadow work that it just comes with the spiritual awakening. It has to happen in order for you to really understand yourself. And if you can't understand yourself, then you can't understand the rest of the world and what's going on.
Yep.
So it is a really important part of the spiritual journey. So I hope that we can help some people with this episode today.
For sure.
So our shadow selves are versions of ourselves that we do not show society. Even usually the people closest to us. It's the parts of ourselves that we have pushed down and ignored. These are the parts that we are insecure about, ashamed of, or frustrated with. Sometimes we even ignore that they are an issue completely. Because we don't heal them, we suppress them. We ignore the parts of ourselves that we fear aren't welcome. So we push these things down and ignore that they exist. But you can only ignore something so long. It comes up.
Yeah.
No matter what you do, you're going to show these shadow parts of yourself. But most of us don't admit that those parts are there.
Yeah.
Shadow work is the practice of loving what is the true you and setting the shame and judgments free. And being our true selves. Shadow work is the process of working with our shadow selves to eliminate their negative effects in our lives. Essentially, shadow work is a form of self-psychoanalysis, really. Shadow work...
Yeah, it really is.
It is, because you're really doing the work by yourself, and so you have to really talk yourself through it. And we'll get into that later. Shadow work refers to the process of understanding and loving the rejected pieces of oneself and darkness. This includes emotions viewed as negative like hatred, anger, jealousy, greed, and neediness. All of those things stem from issues that we have that a lot of times are our shadow self that we push down.
Yeah.
They are. Let's see. So I have an example here for you, actually, that I wrote. One common reason that people struggle to lose weight is because they are protecting themselves from past painful experiences. So a sexual assault survivor may pack on pounds in a subconscious effort to feel unattractive and less targeted. I went through this in my life, and I didn't realize that that's what I was doing until I got older, that I was literally trying to make myself unattractive because that kind of somehow helped the problem.
Right.
But we don't even realize that we're doing those things.
I think so much of our maybe day-to-day reactions to things have a lot to do with this. These parts of us inside, the shadow work,
Yeah.
that until you really start to take a look at it, you don't realize how much it really does affect you day to day
Yep.
if you're not aware.
A lot of this stems from childhood. It just does. We don't even realize it. We don't realize that the small things that our parents say or the people around us say sticks with us, and it makes us who we are. When we were young, we felt shame, fear, anger, sadness, all of these emotions, but we didn't have the tools to process this pain. So most kids looked up to their parents and idolized them as some kind of hero, maybe, when it came to these kind of emotions, that they're supposed to provide, nurturing, and when these things happen, talk to their children, but not everybody experiences those types of things.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, when this pain isn't processed, it stays in our nervous system. Anything that we didn't get out or talk about or whatever, it gets suppressed. The things that we saw, we don't realize that we're doing the same things that our parents did until we actually examine them within this shadow work. So during the shadow work process, you will discover a lot about yourself. As you do shadow work, the reasons why you're experiencing suffering or roadblock after roadblock while trying to achieve your goals will become clear. Everything has become clear for me through this shadow work, and I'm not saying that it's easy, because it's not.
No.
It's been really, really hard. I said that to Mystic Molly on the show, on the radio show, and she said, well, yeah, shadow work is dark. It's not light, and it's true. It's not supposed to be a good time. It's not fun, but what you get from it is worth it.
Yeah, the idea isn't to like go in this dark room and beat yourself up.
No, not
It's
at all.
to go in there and like shed some light and not be so dark.
Right.
But, you know, the scars that are left by trauma that we have in our lives that creates this shadow part of us, it's never going, in my honest opinion, it's never going to be completely gone.
No.
There is a way to heal yourself so these don't have to rule your life day in and day out.
Right.
But it definitely doesn't remove a scar. However, when I look at, like, I have a lot of skin issues and I have to have things burned and frozen and cut off. And, you know, you can't help but feel like, another scar. Great, great.
Yeah.
But even that scar through time starts to look different.
Yes.
It's not so red. It's not so pale white. It doesn't jump out. It starts to blend
Yes.
as a part of me.
Right.
And that's how I try to look at this, is that it's going to always be there, but it's not there to rain on my parade.
Right.
It's there to make me look at it differently.
Yes. Yes. And the goal of shadow work is not to change who we are. It's not at all to do that. There's so many reasons for it, but it really is to help us a lot with self-acceptance.
Yeah.
Your shadow is a natural part of who you are. Shadow work is about developing self-awareness, self-acceptance, and compassion. Shadow work is often therapeutic and spiritual, helping you to see different parts of yourself, even parts you didn't see before. For people who have been especially good at avoiding their shadow work is about acknowledging the existence of the shadows and being curious about exploring them. For those whose shadows is associated with trauma, this type of work helps you work through the trauma and to embrace the part of yourself that you've been suppressing or are ashamed of.
Yeah.
My mother had drug problems. Can't sugarcoat it. She had drug problems and alcohol problems. I saw this, and it's very interesting how this went in my life, and I didn't even realize it until I started doing this shadow work. So my mom she loved opioids, loved pills, and I went down the same path and didn't even notice that I was going down the same path. And I had all these roadblocks that started coming up for me to get away from the opioids. But when I was doing the shadow work about this particular thing, I had to look very deeply into it. Why did you do this? Why is this a part of you? Where did this come from? And looked at my mom and go, I learned this subconsciously. My mom used to reach into her purse and grab a pill and give it to me and tell me, take this. I didn't even know what it was. Yeah. I was 17 years old and she gave me some pill once that made me like really unsteady, and it really freaked me out. But this was what was normal for her. I watched her do cocaine for many years, and I've never tried cocaine because of it. But I'm not blaming my mother for the mistakes I've made and the things I've done, but I'm looking at the source, going back to how did this start, and going, okay, comforting my inner child and saying this wasn't your fault, but you have to fix it.
Yeah.
You have to go forward and put that in your past and say, I'm never going to do that again. That's the shadow work. That just accepting the fact that I was once upon a time an opioid addict was very, very hard for me. That's a part of the shadow work. Accepting that about yourself. It's probably the hardest part of the shadow work.
Yeah, but you've gotten there.
Absolutely. But that's just one small thing in the grand scheme of the shadow work.
Yeah.
You know, there's so many things that we have been through and that are inside of us that we have to deal with.
I think the one thing that, for me, that really jumps out about it is what it's teaching and has taught me, because I spent a lot of time. I wouldn't say I was a problem child, but I definitely wasn't an angel. So I've spent years, even as a young person, going to like individual therapy and talking, you know, and as well as like family stuff too, where go in as a family and talk. But I think what it's done is to show me that even some of the stuff that I consider trauma, besides like I could even subcategorize things and be like, well, is that really trauma? Like, not abuse, like physical abuse and mental and emotional abuse. That's definitely trauma. But we absorb things as children because that's all we know.
Yeah.
So whatever we're around the most, we're going to probably mimic
Yes.
it like a parrot does, around its owners. This isn't intended. It's not intentional trauma. It's what it is. It's confusing us. Mm-hmm. It's confusing us about, okay, that's great. That's who you are. But who am I?
Right.
When do I get to make up my own mind and my own decision? And usually by the time we're 18, we've heard for 18 years, when you're 18,
Right.
you get to make up your own mind
Yeah.
and decide. But by then, for a lot of us, it's too late.
Yeah.
We're too far down that rabbit hole to see another way.
Yeah.
And so what this is teaching me has a lot to do with my reactions
Yeah.
to things.
Oh, yeah.
Probably the most important thing, because the more I just keep reacting negatively to things in my life, the more I'm just kind of running on that karmic wheel instead of, okay, I got to try to figure out a different way to deal with when something triggers that in me.
Right. Yes.
You know?
Absolutely. Yep. So what are some of the benefits of shadow work? Because I know right now it probably sounds like, ooh, this is a lot of work, but the benefits outweigh the work. Trust me.
Yeah.
Well, you're going to gain more confidence and self-esteem. That really is important when it comes to letting go of these things. I used to have a really, really low self-esteem, and I've gotten to the point where I just go, what difference does it make what I look like? Or, this is me, this is who I am, and if you like me, you like me. And it really has improved my self-esteem in a different way than I ever imagined that it would. It's not about like changing who I am. It was accepting who I am. I will always be 5 feet tall. I will always have weight issues. I will always have a wider than average nose. And you know what? It's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I didn't feel that way for 40 something years.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'd say that's probably one of the biggest differences I do notice about you, being that meeting you 25, 30 years ago, that aura or essence about you compared to now. You were much more reserved and shy, but you could see that level of self-consciousness
Yeah.
that you've grown. I can see that part in you. you
Yeah.
know?
The other side tries to help me a lot with this. My mom really helps, and sometimes I forget, but like certain things, like I am really short, and so in crowds I'm just totally ignored completely.
Yeah.
But what this has made happen to me over the years is that I focus on the ground. I don't look at people in the eyes. I act self-conscious about myself going through a crowd because I feel like people don't see me. But towards the beginning of the spiritual journey, I kept hearing my mom say, look up, be confident, put your shoulders back, act like you're a part of this community. You're here for a reason, not, oh, excuse me, sorry, I'm here. And you know what? It really has changed a lot about how I feel about myself.
Yeah.
And sometimes I forget that and I'll be, oh, here I am, the little girl here. And then I'm like, what are you doing? Have your confidence. And yeah, for sure.
I like that you're small.
I like that I'm small too. It doesn't bother me, but it's like because
Yeah.
I'm so little, sometimes I get trampled and
I related. That was a kind of a self-conscious thing for me. I think I was probably up until the 5th grade. I was always the shortest in my class.
yeah, me
And
too.
then once I hit junior high, then I had some sort of growth spurt, but
Yeah, I never had that growth spurt. I was always that kid that couldn't fit into like the juniors' clothes. I was still wearing kid clothes when I was like 13. It was ridiculous.
you're like, yeah, I got to go to little folks shop. We're going
Exactly.
clothes shopping
Yeah, exactly.
for the first day of 8th grade.
All my friends are like shopping at like Windsor and, Forever 21-ish type shops. And here I am in the kids section at Macy's. Yeah. It will also bring you better relationships with others.
Yeah.
Because they say like you can't fully love somebody else until you love yourself.
Yeah.
And it really is true, because if you don't love yourself and you don't like yourself, how can you with somebody else?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it helps you work on
Because
those
you're probably
relationships.
reacting to those things that trigger you, and then you snap at people, and
Yep.
you know.
It also will increase your compassion towards others. I've always been an empath, always been a compassionate person, but this makes me see into everybody's soul. Even the worst of people. Like we watched that Jeffrey Dahmer thing, and here I am feeling sorry for him. Oh my God, look at how his parents treated him, right? He's going to go and eat a bunch of people, but it's okay because his parents... No, I'm not saying it's okay. I'm just saying that I see that. I see what takes somebody to that point, and it makes me want to be compassionate to everybody that I come in contact with.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You also have better clarity because all of this damage and stuff isn't clouding your judgment anymore. You see things for what they actually are instead of trying to see them through some weird perception that it's kind of messed up from, years of trauma or whatever. You see things clearer for sure. I asked our listeners, I said, do you suffer from or deal with any of the following things in your life? If you do, and you answer yes to any of these are things that the shadow work can help with. So the top one that people said was lack of direction in life. And 2 was feeling empty inside. Yeah, I think a lot of people feel that, especially time to time. It's not necessarily all the time, but finding unhealthy ways to escape. This has always been one of my things. Food, alcohol, drugs, whatever it is that makes us feel better, even if it's just temporary.
Yeah.
It's finding those. And shopping. I used to shop a lot because it made me feel better. Gifts to myself from myself.
Chocolate.
Right, for sure, always. Let's see what else is on here. Unresolved childhood trauma. So I, for many years, thought I had resolved my childhood trauma. I thought I'd gone to therapy. I worked on it. I admit to what happened. No, that's not it. There's way more to this than that. And that's where the shadow work comes in. It helps you to really dive deep into these unresolved childhood issues.
Yeah.
My sister, so I have a half sister, right? We have the same dad. And her mother just passed away a few days ago.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah, sorry about that. But they've been, not on the best of terms for a long time. And then her mom had dementia. So it just is what it is. But even with our dad, she doesn't have that great of a relationship anymore. It's really kind of been cut off. And now she's starting to have all of these memories that are coming back and wondering why she's having these memories coming back. It's things in the shadow work that now she's dealing with. So I asked her if she would give us a little story about one of the things that she's dealing with. And so she said, when I was little, MTV was not allowed. So of course I wanted to watch it. Our dad is very strict about music with her, and he was very strict with a lot of things with her.
Yeah.
She said one day my mom was cleaning their room and watching that music video for, what was that? I said it was the Guns N' Roses song. Oh, now I forgot what song it was. The Heaven song.
Oh, Knocking on Heaven's Door.
Knocking on Heaven's Door. Thank you. So they were watching the video. She said, I went in and we were singing and dancing around. Dad came in and yelled at her for it. She was saying that it was okay because it was about heaven. He said it was about a guy who can't get into heaven. He keeps knocking, but God won't let him in because of how he lived his life. We both got a lecture about it. It's still the first thing that comes to my mind when I hear that song. Even though I have let go of the fear of not going to heaven, it still bothers me. So the working through it is changing the memory to a good one of having fun with Kathleen, her mother. And so I said, when you listen to the song now, how does it make you feel? And she said, like, it makes me literally see a man knocking on the Golden Gate with no answer, like pounding outside the gates, like a hopeless feeling, like you can't change things once they're done.
Yeah.
And that's not, first of all, with music isn't, it's in the eye of the listener.
Yeah.
It's what you take from it. So she had this problem with him with Hotel California too, because some of the lines in it were like, oh, the devil. But that was his perception.
Right.
That's not what the song was intended to be about.
Right.
And for most people,
There's
that's
no
not
devil,
what they
it's
think
the
of.
beast. And I mean, a beast
Stealing,
can be anything.
There's a couple other lines in Hotel California too. I can't remember what they were, but things that he just pointed out
Right.
that was like, this is, against our religion or whatever.
Yeah.
So these are songs that it hits in a different place when she hears these. So a part of the shadow work is acknowledging that, 1st of all, accepting that and trying to figure out exactly where that came from. Why did he do that? Why,
And see how much we take that as our truth,
Yes.
as our identity, because somebody said this to us.
Yes.
And that's where we have to go. I think it's time I make up my own mind
Yes.
instead of taking everyone else's opinion about it.
Absolutely. We don't even realize that. There were so many things that my mom would say and do when I was a kid. And as I got older, I realized, wow, this isn't right. This isn't right at all. She taught me some really messed up things.
Yeah.
But as a kid, how are you supposed to know that? You don't know. You just trust that your parents are going to teach you the right things. And you want to believe that they're always telling you the truth. But most of the time, that's not the case. We get lied to by our parents.
And it's coming from their point of view.
That's true, too. He truly probably believed that
Yeah.
song was bad because the guy couldn't get into heaven. It was
Right.
rock and roll,
Right.
But he's entitled to his opinion. But he messed her up a little bit with
Right.
that. And so now she has to fix it. And that's
Right.
where the shadow work comes in.
Yes.
So one question that I get asked a lot when it comes to the shadow work is, how do you start it? Where do you begin? I don't know where to start. That's why I'm not doing it. So I really had no idea what shadow work was when I started doing it. Like, I had never heard of it or anything. And then all of a sudden I had this intuitive message one day that said shadow work. And it also came along with inner child work. Our inner child is that little kid in us. And sometimes that little kid in us needs nurturing still all these years later.
Yeah.
And so that's a part that goes along with the shadow work as well. But one of the things that I did at this time, and I didn't even realize till recently that they kind of correlated, is I did find a therapist. I found a spiritual therapist, and she helped me get started with the shadow work. She actually really helped me with the inner child work.
Yes.
She's the one that taught me a lot about that. So one of the first things to do is decide how you're going to go about this. Are you
Yes.
going to seek some kind of counseling, a mentor, somebody, or are you going to try and do this on your own? Either way, it's important, it's helpful.
I think with somebody like what you're talking about, and even what I experienced, that I don't know how, like, what it is about it, but for me personally, like, me vocalizing out loud the things that happened or the things that I've done was kind of important for me. Because internally, I know what's going on. I can think about it. I can feel it. But I've got to get this out. My own ears need to hear myself
Yes.
say it.
Yes, absolutely.
So having that person to work with, whether it's a therapist or whatever, you got a life coach, whatever your thing is,
Yeah.
I think there's a benefit to it. Not just for that purpose, but there are then two souls that are making a connection.
Yep.
And that's positive energy. That's positive vibration.
Yep.
Even if you're talking about something sad.
Yeah, absolutely. And it will be sad at times, bringing up that stuff for the shadow work. It absolutely will be. One of the harder things I think that we have to do in this is practice spotting that inner shadow.
Yeah.
So when you do something or you say something or you feel something that isn't necessarily positive, you have to ask yourself why. You have to go, oh, look, there's something about myself that isn't what it should be.
Right.
Being honest with yourself is hard.
Yeah.
It really is, because I don't know that I want to say people want to think they're perfect, maybe, but I think we always want to blame the other person for issues in our lives. This person did that, this person. No. You're your own person,
Right.
and you react the way that you are going to react, and so you have to stop yourself.
Yeah, because most of the time when I'm calling somebody out on something, I've done it.
Yeah, right. That's exactly right. Yep. So, yeah, to do this, to start the shadow work, it's important to spot your inner shadow. To do this, you can start by spotting and acknowledging the habits that you have. What patterns do you tend to repeat in life that you feel are holding you back. That's another thing that's important to look at, because if there's something in your life that's constantly repeating, like you say, it keeps happening to me. I keep choosing the wrong men. I keep losing my job. Okay, so examine it. You have to stop and you have to look at it and examine it and see, why do these cycles keep happening to me? And go back to the being honest with yourself about it.
It's going to mean taking accountability on some level,
Oh, yes,
because
it is.
trauma and things that are done to us isn't license or excuse to then do unto others.
No.
So most of us have taken that trauma and repeated it in certain ways that may have hurt somebody else.
Yes.
And that's where we have to be accountable. We have to be willing to look at the inner child and the trauma that happened before we were old enough to make our own choices.
Right.
And then the bad choices we made when we were old enough to make our own choices.
Right. The accountability part of it really needs to be not just within ourselves, that we hold ourselves accountable, but being honest with people around us. Mm-hmm. Like if you and I have an argument and I see something that I've done wrong, a lot of times I'll say that. Or if something comes up with Marina, I'll say to you, I see that I did this wrong. So next time I have to do it differently. I have to do it better. But right. I recognize it instead of just being like, I did everything right. I said the right things. No. Yeah. I know that there's things that I could have done differently, that, whatever. You have to recognize those. Yeah. And then the next time that the situation comes up, handle it a little bit better than before. It's not going to happen overnight. Like, I still have a lot of shadow work to do. And I've been doing this for probably 4 years now, at least. I've been working on this shadow work. And I don't think it'll ever end.
I don't think so.
And it doesn't get any easier. I'm constantly having to face things about myself that are like, ugh. But I get annoyed because I want them all gone. I want all of the negative stuff gone now. It's like, it's a goal for me to try and push out as much of that as I can.
Right.
Not just because I want to live a happier life and I feel like that will help, but because I want to be an inspiration to other people and show them, look, once upon a time, I was the negative Nancy, probably the most negative Nancy you could get. I see my Facebook statuses from like 10 years ago and I go, ew, what? I want to delete them, but I don't because I realize that every time that I read them back, I realize how far I've come in this. So there's a lot of growth that happens with it, but it doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
Something else that you need to do to start is to pay attention to your triggers. You should pay attention to anything that triggers you, anything that pops out to you, anything that makes you feel weird, reminds you of past trauma, and notice it. A good thing to do here is to keep a journal. Write it down when you're triggered by something, what triggered you, and examine it. What happened here? Why did this trigger me? And how can I make it so that the next time it doesn't trigger me? Also, very important is noticing if you're projecting. You can spot your shadow by noticing yourself projecting. One way you can do this is by using the mirror technique. The mirror technique is very uncomfortable at first. However, it can allow you to uncover who your shadow self is. Pay attention to who you think you are and who, when you interact with people. When negative feelings come up, ask yourself if you're projecting. So basically, like if I say something negative about somebody, you have to ask yourself, do I have that negative feeling about myself? Why am I projecting this?
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, most of the time you've done it already yourself.
Yes, absolutely.
So we're recognizing the behaviors in others that we don't like that triggers us. Yes. But that doesn't mean we're necessarily innocent from those behaviors ourselves.
No. And I'm glad that you brought that up because we have a friend that we were talking about this earlier who was kind of doing some things that I wasn't really thrilled with.
Yeah.
Things that I have done in the past. They triggered me. When this friend started telling me about the things that they were doing, I got triggered. And I didn't realize that until today because I kept asking myself, why am I so upset about this? Like, it's their life. It's not my life because it triggered me. Okay, why did it trigger me? Because you made those mistakes and you realize now that they were mistakes and you don't want to see your friend making the same mistakes.
Right.
But I was projecting. And it took me a little bit to step back and go, maybe you need to examine this. Yeah. And that wasn't easy to do because I wanted to just sit there and be like, this is just a moral dilemma here, which a part of it is.
Yeah.
But the other part of it is that I was triggered.
Yep.
Recognizing that is important.
But recognizing is growth. It's healing.
Yes.
So, when I said that I feel like shadow work never really ends. No, it doesn't. But I think the intensity of it is lessened, and I think the healing is greater the more you focus on it.
Yes.
You know, it's like retraining yourself a little bit, obviously.
I definitely can see both sides of the being easier. Like in some respects it does get easier because you realize what you're doing and that you need to do this, but
Right.
sometimes those things that are put off
Yep.
are actually some of the most painful things to deal with, because you don't want to deal with those at first, you know. It's not easy.
Yes.
But yeah, definitely worth it. Think back to your childhood. Which emotions were you punished for having? Many children get told to get over their anger or sadness. As a result, these emotions get repressed. Yeah. We grow up believing they're bad and that we're bad for having them. My mom was notorious for this. She wasn't a consoling type person. I had a fear of wind and stuff like that. And she didn't comfort me. She just told me to shut up. She didn't want to hear about it. Yeah. So these things have been carried on because I wasn't nurtured as a child. And I'm sure everybody listening probably has those types of things that their parent did that maybe they didn't even realize at the time that that's what they were doing.
Yeah.
You know? So also practice loving words of affirmation towards yourself, including your shadow. Don't ever put yourself down. When you put yourself down, what are you doing? Like, what's the point? Yeah. You know, we all have made mistakes. We all, you know, do things wrong occasionally, but you have to turn those around. I trust in you, myself. Yeah. I believe in myself. I'm glad that I am here. I'm worthy of love. I am enough. These types of things. We have to tell ourselves that we are worthy of everything that we experience and that we are supposed to be happy and feel love and all of that. Yeah. It's important.
Yes.
I mentioned keeping a journal, and I will also mention meditating. Like always, meditating is really the first step in anything. It really is. Even if it is taking that drive out and listening to music and just clearing your mind and focusing on the driving and the music. Yes. It gets it so that you can more clearly hear things from your higher self, because your higher self will help you through this. Mm-hmm. If you will need it. Yeah. Absolutely. Keep an open mind about all of this, about anything. Don't try and pigeonhole yourself or think this is too hard or whatever. Just keep an open mind. Yeah. Because it really is worth it. Practicing self-compassion is also important. Being patient with yourself. You're going to mess up. You're going to start to heal from a trigger, and then you're going to be triggered again. Yeah. That's how this works. The universe does that to see if you've grown and see if you've learned. So the trigger is not supposed to trigger you anymore when you're healed from that certain thing.
Exactly.
Yep. So be patient.
Yeah, your reaction will have a lot to do with that, like to show you whether you have or haven't.
Absolutely. You know, it's not easy, any of it. It's not, I didn't choose to do this thinking it was going to be easy, but I was told that the benefits were going to outweigh the hard times and stuff, the work that I had to put into it. Yeah. And it's true. And if there's anybody that needs help with this type of thing, feel free to reach out, because I would be more than happy to help. I've done so much of this shadow work, and even though it's hard, I love it. I know that sounds weird, but it's like I love fixing these things because it just makes me a happier all-around person. I can feel that 5 years after the beginning of the spiritual awakening, I am a different person with so many things. And that's what the universe has done for me with all of this.
Even if it's not like fixed per se, and I hate to pull that word out because, you know, I wonder if like, is it ever really totally fixed? It's definitely repaired on some level.
Sure.
You know, like, but that, God, I kind of forgot what I was going to say here. But yeah, the fixing part, I think as long as I'm willing to look at it and I'm not running from it.
Yeah.
Even if I have to be pointed out by somebody else, am I willing to look at it? Or if I call myself out on it, am I willing to look at it?
Yep.
Or am I going to get all defensive?
Right. That's the key.
And again, react because now I've been triggered.
Yes.
It's the wanting, not having to be accountable, but wanting to kind of be accountable.
Yes.
And the goal is like, yeah, I want to fix myself, but I don't want to lie to myself and go, well, this has already happened to me. I can never undo this.
No. Yeah.
So it is what it is on some level.
Yes.
But I can heal.
Yes.
I can, I won't have to affect me every time it pops into my mind.
That's right.
It won't have to continually affect me the same way.
That's right. So every time that you feel one of those triggers where you become angry or even anxious, when I get anxious now, I ask myself, why are you anxious? What's going on? And I try and figure it out. Is this something external? Am I feeling something like an earthquake or whatever coming? Or am I allowing somebody to trigger me?
Yeah.
Am I picking up somebody else's energy? I analyze it and stop so that I can fix it. Because otherwise, you go with it. You know, I got my nails done yesterday, and there was a lady at the salon it was just me and my nail lady. And this lady comes in for a pedicure a half hour early and sits down and starts having a full-on conversation on her phone. Very loud. In a salon, there's nobody there. There's just the three of us. And it was a horrible conversation. And she talked the entire time, and I had to sit there and listen to it. And I felt myself getting a little triggered. And,
Yeah.
how you do that, it's
supposed to relax.
Yeah, I'm trying to relax. But every time that I felt myself getting a little triggered by it, I asked myself, what's this going to do? Why am I getting triggered? She's not doing this to annoy me. I think that's the kind of things that have changed in my mind with the shadow work, is that I think a lot of times we feel like things are directed at us.
Yeah.
Well, this woman, she wasn't doing this to annoy me. She's just...
We're taking it personally for some reason.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Where it really is her own issue. Like, I won't go into a salon like that and talk on my phone. I will talk on my phone at home, in my car. She should have gone to her car, but that's my opinion.
Right.
She lives a different life than I do.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to let her trigger me, but I would have before.
Yeah.
So those are the types of things. Just ask yourself, what's triggering me? Why? And is it worth it? Is it worth it is a very big question to ask, because if that woman would have triggered me, I would have taken it on with my day.
Yeah, some people would let it ruin their day.
Yes, absolutely. Even subconsciously. You don't realize this woman made me anxious, and now I'm going to go into another store and I'm going to be maybe not real nice to the person in there, and it keeps going.
It does.
Yeah, so you have to stop it.
Yeah.
Before it starts. So, we did an episode a while back on inner child. That's a good episode to listen to in conjunction with this. That's 103. Your inner child really is a big part of this that you need to comfort. And at first, when I was seeing that therapist, and she told me that, comfort your inner child. Look at a picture of yourself when you're like 7 or 8, because that's when you're most impressionable. And tell that little girl she's okay. And she didn't do anything wrong. And she didn't deserve the things that happened to her. And at first, I thought it was stupid. She's like, give that inner child a hug. Oh my gosh, it made so much difference. Did I break down crying?
Right.
Yeah, sure. But it helped.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of people that could listen to this topic and think, well, I don't want to sit and overanalyze every thought that comes into my head. Well,
I don't overanalyze.
I understand that. And I don't either. However, there is a lot to be learned in your own thoughts.
Yes.
And there is a lot to be learned in dealing with your own trauma. It's not fun and it's not easy, but I can definitely say I was not the same person.
Yeah.
And 10 years from now, 20 years from now, I won't be the same person.
Yeah.
Because I'm evolving. I'm paying attention to those things. I'm holding myself accountable.
Yep.
As much as I possibly can.
Absolutely.
Even if I don't recognize it in the moment, I try to then analyze that thought, and if there's like, hey, I need to go apologize for that, or I need to somehow make restitution, then I should do that.
Yes. As hard as it is,
Yeah.
it's an important part of the process.
Yeah.
For sure. I want to read a couple of things that our listeners contributed before we finish up.
Cool.
Nancy said, working on healing my wounds let me recognize that I am a truly exceptional human, and although I am not perfect, I am still lovable. The single greatest gift I have ever given myself was doing the work that brought me to this place. When I say hard work, it was, and it was the hardest thing I've ever done. Facing your demons is hard, but very much worth the effort.
Yeah.
Absolutely agree.
Totally.
And then Chelsea said, after having 13 major surgeries in 15 years, I finally knew that my physical health issues were tied directly to my repressed trauma. Trauma is its own energy, and if left undressed, it will manifest somehow, either drug use, codependency, major health issues, etc. After working hard, I finally broke the cycle. Being aware of my shadow self was less important than being able to self-regulate when I face challenges. And that's a huge part of it, self-regulating.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But courting my demons allowed me to access myself authentically, which made people begin to gravitate to me. I was surprised at first, but owning your truth, accepting responsibility, and being willing to be vulnerable only strengthened me. And when you recognize and value the shadow self, you discover many attributes hidden inside the darkness that are necessary to understand how you experience the light.
Yeah.
I love that, Chelsea. Thank you for
that's
sharing
great.
that.
Thank you.
So, yeah, love to hear everybody's opinions on this. If they've done it, if you want to share with us, send us an email, let us know what you've done for your shadow work and how you're doing with that. I'd love to hear more stories.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Those are cool.
Yeah. So there you have it, friends.
Very nice.
Let's work on healing, doing some shadow work this week.
Yeah.
I'll find something that I need to
There's
work on.
always something to work
Always. Yep. It's just, what do I want to work on next?
Yeah.
And it always comes up. It's not something that I go, there's a list of things I want to work on.
Right.
It's like tomorrow or the next day, it'll be put in front of me.
Yeah.
Always. Oh, you can work
Or
on
if
this.
it's not like I keep thinking about a particular situation or a person, I'm like, what is this?
Yep. That's,
What is this?
Get it out of your own head and deal with it. Yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Go, friends.
Good job.
Hey, thank you. You too.
Well, before we say goodbye to everybody, you want to share your information one more time, please?
Yes, so you can find me at SamanthaJonesPsychicMedium.com. And again, the radio show is Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time on VoiceAmerica.com on the Empowerment Channel. Got me there for a year now.
Yeah, so call in, get your readings. You can
let's
get
do
your
it.
readings.
Yep, got a lot of shows coming up. So, and you, sir?
Yes, again, for my art, djonesartcollection.com for the web, at djonesartcollection for Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok.
Yay.
And that's all I got.
And happy full moon, everybody, because it's a full moon.
Tonight?
Yes, tonight.
Oh,
So
yeah.
tomorrow it won't be. You guys will hear it after. But still, full moon.
Go out there and howl at it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Enjoy.
Well, we hope everybody has a great week.
That we do.
And until next week.